Among paranormal historians, there are certain haunted house cases that are classic and legendary in their activity. Amityville out on Long Island is top of the mark when it comes to infamous haunted house cases. Asterisk, the Smurl haunting in West Pittston, Pennsylvania showed that when a family is haunted, nobody is off limits. The Entity House in Culver City, out in West Los Angeles, was so active that the photographs documenting the activity still cannot be replicated today. Asterisk, hard to believe at times, but there are haunted house cases popping up more and more in the paranormal community even today. Asterisk, the Bothell Hell House outside Seattle, Wah breaks about every rule in the book, while the Screaming House of Union, Missouri literally screams at its unlucky inhabitants. The origins of such haunts are all wholly unique and terrifying in their own chilling and sometimes violent capacities. Asterisk, one such house that should be considered among the legendary haunted ranks is the Snedeker House of Southington, Connecticut. Asterisk, the town of Southington itself is that of perfect Connecticut small-town charm. But in 1986, the town was thrown into a frenzy of media chaos when a family reported their new home as being haunted. Asterisk, with details scarce and emerging at the time. Media pundits and paranormal investigators alike were unaware. But the claims from the Snedekers would later be referred to in paranormal lore as the haunting in Connecticut. The house that the film The Haunting in Connecticut is based on is located at 208 Meriden Avenue. Asterisk, in 1986, the Snedekers were a family that struggled in a lot of ways. The father, Alan, was a former stonemason who was suspected of having struggles with alcoholism. Asterisk, his wife and mother of the children, Carmen, was a waitress in between jobs and finances, definitely became a sensitive situation. Asterisk, this financial hardship was further complicated for them when their eldest son, Philip, was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a rare and sometimes deadly cancer that attacks the body's immune system with intensity. Asterisk, the Snedekers looked to get Philip into a cancer treatment hospital as soon as possible, and they found one located outside Southington. Asterisk, packing up what belongings they had, they moved to Southington in search of a new home to live, while Philip was to endure a series of cancer treatments. Asterisk, looking for something with size, as they had 4 children plus 2 nieces that eventually moved in with them. The family found a duplex-style, multi-story home to rent. Asterisk, from the outside, it was 2 floors, on a quiet street with plenty of room for everyone and at least near the hospital. Asterisk, the price range being amazingly affordable, the Snedekers jumped at renting the home. Little did they know that this picturesque Connecticut home was also formerly the town's funeral home, the Hallahan Funeral Home to be exact. Asterisk, moving into their new home and funeral home, the Snedekers and their children each took off to choose their new bedrooms. Philip, of all places, chose the basement. Asterisk, teenage angst, seclusion due to illness, or just morbid curiosity itself, Philip, nonetheless, marked out this area as his new domain. Asterisk, upon moving his furnishings downstairs into the basement, the family soon discovered a hidden collection of antiquated mortuary equipment. This discovery was not solely limited to the basement, as the massive home also had some left over furnishings in different parts of it as well, such as bedroom dresser drawers. Inside the drawers, the Snedekers found a few photographs of what can only be described as pictures pertaining to people being prepared for funeral burial. Asterisk, another room was a former coffin room that still held plenty of coffin pieces in there to give anyone a sure fright. Asterisk, the biggest shock also came on an extended bit of the property. where some headstones were found indicating that bodies were buried on the actual property itself. *A quick check with the town's assessor of real estate property confirmed that the home was indeed the former Hallahan funeral home. The idea of living inside of what was once a funeral home did bring about some initial concerns for the Snedekers. However, given their financial commitment to the home as well as Philip's future cancer treatments to consider, they decided to stand firm in their new rental. The very first sign of paranormal activity inside. The house was a series of bizarre sounds that would occur day and night. Mysterious rappings, along with scratching sounds, seemed to emanate from every part of the home without explanation or reason. Inside the home was a dumbwaiter of sorts, where the chain pulleys would rattle and move on their own without anything loaded into them. Carmen's young children initially clamored that they were seeing ghosts walking through the home and were so scared that they wanted to leave. She took everything therein as overactive imaginations from her children, but she had an eerie feeling about the place herself. The children often told about the lights flickering on and off, and their father, Alan, got upset about the misuse of electricity and removed light bulbs from rooms. The dumbwaiter was used for loading and delivering bodies down to the basement area where the mortuary was located and was now Philip's new bedroom. Mysterious sounds continued and sudden fluctuations in temperature occurred. One room would seem to be ice cold in the middle of July, while the room adjacent would be normal room temperature. The piercing coldness would then disappear as quickly as it had emerged in a room, all without any logical explanation. Then these mysterious activities gradually increased to become more physical. Carmen was taking a shower one evening, and the shower curtain began to cling to her body. While science can prove this could be a natural phenomenon, Carmen claimed that the shower curtain began to mysteriously rise as it clung to her. She claimed the shower curtain wrapped itself around her face and neck, choking her. Blinded with shampoo in her face. Her muffled cries for help were eventually heard by her niece Tammy, who was staying with them, and she pulled and unwrapped the curtain from around her aunt's throat. Neither could explain what happened. Little did Carmen realize that the attacks were just beginning for her as she began to be repeatedly assaulted by an unseen force. The assaults would happen at random times, when she was completely alone and afraid to reveal these attacks to her husband Alan. Carmen would later reveal that the entity abusing her would become very forceful and slap at her face. Carmen's niece, Tammy, also claims to have been assaulted. Tammy had later described a quilt from her bed levitating off her all the way up to the ceiling. Tammy also claims that she would see a black shadowy face manifest during these terrifying times, along with an unexplained whispering. She would cling to her Catholic faith and often would try to utilize her rosary beads only to have this same force try and viciously rip the rosary from her grip. Apparitions inside the home began making themselves known in physical sense, appearing as a taller woman with long black hair, pale skin, and piercing black eyes. Another was in the form of a man with whitish-colored hair and often seen in a pinstripe tuxedo. Philip kept up with his radiation treatments at the University of Connecticut Hospital, where he frequented and was noted as having a bizarre change in personality, habits, and would lash out uncharacteristically at staff. The terror inside the home mounted more and more, where even mopping the floor turned into a nightmare. Carmen, one afternoon, had taken to mopping the kitchen floor, and without any explanation at all, the mop water turned into blood. Asterisk the dark red blood now inexplicably staining the floor, accompanied by the stench of a freshly decaying dead body, was too much for Carmen and her family. They needed help, and needed it fast. Entering into the situation were local state residents and paranormal investigators, Ed and Lorraine Warren from The Conjuring fame. Asterisk. It was Carmen Snedeker who called them to investigate their rapidly terrifying situation. Asterisk. While on the phone with Lorraine, Carmen told of gripping her rosary beads which were coming apart at their very seams by an unseen force. The Warrens arrived at that Southington home by the next morning with a Catholic priest in tow. Asterisk. A general blessing of the home was conducted by the priest, which seemed to have zero effect on cleansing any paranormal entities from the home. Asterisk. Getting into the heart of the matter, the Warrens found from local research that the home was built in the 1920s and became a funeral home. Asterisk. One of the funeral workers was supposedly convicted of committing necrophilia in the morgue of the home under the conditions of some satanic ritual. The Warrens theorized, as has a large part of the paranormal community, that such heinous satanic acts can lead to paranormal activity and welcome entities into a place. Asterisk. Accompanying the Warrens during the many days and nights they investigated the house was their nephew, John Zaffis, a future paranormal specialist. Asterisk. Zaffis would later become popular as a collector of haunted objects. He himself experienced the same terror that was affecting the Snedekers firsthand. One of the more bizarre occurrences one evening was when Zaffis was spending the night in the home. He found himself undergoing asterisk. In paranormal circles, phantomania is a form of sleep paralysis that is rooted in supernatural origin and can cause great mental and emotional anguish. Asterisk. As he was struggling with his own bout of phantomania, Carmen was in another room undergoing the same supernatural attack. Asterisk. Zaffis would later comment on the situation by saying that the terrifying visions accompanying the phantomania were simultaneously occurring in both him and Carmen at the same time. As word began to spread about the haunting, Lorraine Warren later recalled that a pair of scientific instructors came to debunk the home as being haunted. Asterisk. During the early midnight hours of their first investigation, this pair of scientists ended up fleeing in the middle of the night and were so rattled by it that they actually moved to another state completely after experiencing it. Firsthand, the Warrens seek an exorcism of the Snedeker house, with the initial blessing of the home unsuccessful. The Warrens then contacted the Bishop of Hartford, voicing their concerns that much more Catholic help was needed. Asterisk. In response, the bishop directed that two priests go to the home to not only bless it again but also hold a sacred Catholic Mass inside the home as well. Asterisk. During the ceremonial Mass, Ed Warren suffered a mild heart attack and believed that this was somehow caused by one of the many demonic entities in the home that held him responsible for the Catholic priests being present. The Mass itself had whatever was haunting the home very angry but also wounded. Both priests, along with the Warrens, compelled the bishop to send in a Catholic exorcist to drive out the evil forces. Asterisk. Without much supernatural interference from the assumed demons in the home, the exorcism seemed to be successful in the sense that the dark and brooding atmosphere inside it immediately felt lighter. Asterisk. Lorraine Warren would later comment on the situation by saying that during the actual crescendo of the exorcism itself, a rather large and thick tree mysteriously snapped in half and fell across the yard. Asterisk. Warren claimed that the weather that day was actually quite clear and rather ordinary. But some paranormal theorists claim that whatever was possibly haunting the Snedeker house, actually passed through the tree and snapped it in half, after a word began to circulate. The national media picked up that the Snedeker home was haunted, and the Warrens were at the center of its cleansing. Asterisk. Tabloids and talk magazines alike blasted to the world the horrors that were inside the Snedeker home. The Snedekers eventually moved from the home, and it was purchased by a pair of private citizens. Asterisk. The new owners of the home claimed that they have not experienced anything supernatural or paranormal since purchasing it. They do, however, state that sometimes people will take pictures of the house from the street, but nothing sinister has ever come of it. The story of the Snedekers eventually had Hollywood come calling to tell the story of the haunting in Connecticut. Asterisk. The hauntings inside the home and even Hollywood's story are loosely based on true life occurrences. Asterisk. As for the Snedekers themselves, they have seemingly faded into post-haunting obscurity. Asterisk. Carmen has been known to give rare talks on the haunting that she and her family experienced. She believes that any other family going through a similar situation knows that there is hope. The real Amityville Horror House. The story behind the real Amityville Horror House is a gruesome tale. The horrific murders that took place in the Amityville home in November of 1974 forever haunt this tainted residence, and what followed has been told and retold. Asterisk. Ronald Joseph DeFeo Jr., otherwise known as Butch, was convicted in 1974 for murdering his entire family in a cold-blooded shooting spree. His mother, father, and 4 siblings were all shot dead in the Amityville home while they slept. DeFeo, who was 23 at the time of the murders, was the eldest of the family's 5 children. Asterisk. While originally fabricating a story about a mob hitman who was responsible for the bloodbath, DeFeo eventually confessed to the murders, asserting that voices within the house had convinced him to do it. Asterisk. He was arrested by Suffolk County Police and charged with 6 counts of second-degree murder. Robert Butch. DeFeo remains incarcerated at Sullivan Correctional Facility in New York. He has been denied all appeals and continues to serve out his 6 consecutive life sentences, 2 years after the murders took place. George and Kathy Lutz, along with her 3 children from a previous marriage, moved into what they imagined would become their dream home. In fewer than 30 days, the terrifying truth drove them from the home and nearly their sanity. After fewer than 4 weeks of living at the Goshen Avenue home, George and Kathy Lutz left behind nearly all of their worldly possessions and fled to live with a relative outside the city. They never set foot in the residence again. But what drove them to swoop up their children and flee? Reports of paranormal activity began almost immediately. Danny, one of the Lutz boys, reported that he was swarmed by flies while unpacking clothes in his new bedroom. Asterisk. Minutes later, the insects disappeared without a trace. On more than one occasion, Danny recalls levitating above his bed. Random objects were said to have flown across a room without warning. Asterisk. The eyes of a hellish hog appeared to glow red in the night, and the walls oozed a green goo of unknown origin. Asterisk. A voice reportedly warned the local priest to get out while he prayed incantations in a vain attempt to rid the house of its pesky poltergeists. Asterisk. None of these accounts could ever be verified by anyone outside of the Lutz family. But over the years, George and Kathy's stories never changed, and neither did their children's. Asterisk. They passed lie detector tests and surprisingly reaped very little financial reward for the notoriety the house brought them. When the Lutz family moved out of the Amityville house in 1977, they had hoped to leave the paranormal activity behind. Unfortunately for them, it seemed the haunting was not attached to the house itself, but to their own family. They claimed that they continued to be haunted for years after departing the infamous house. And the new owners, who purchased the house for far below what the Lutzes had paid for it, never reported any unusual activity in the home. George and Kathy Lutz divorced in the 1980s. George had become prone to bouts of rage and was at times feared by his stepchildren. In 2004, Kathy died of emphysema, and 2 years later George succumbed to a long illness. Their 3 children currently live in and around New York City. The home was built in 1927 at 112 Ocean Avenue in Long Island, just south of New York City. However, the address has changed and now sits upon 108 Ocean Avenue. The original address was expunged from all maps at the behest of one of the subsequent owners because of the notoriety of the films. The home has been remodeled several times and the paint has changed. Don't confuse the movie home for the true home, as they don't look exactly alike. The easiest way to recognize the real Amityville horror house is by its half-moon windows that have haunted all of us since the first movie, the 1979 hit movie. The Amityville Horror was later adapted from the book and documented the chronicles of the Lutz family. George Lutz, who was known to be a bit out there and possessed numerous books on Satanism and sorcery, was portrayed by actor James Brolin. If you've been dreaming of owning your very own house of horrors, this elegant estate was recently listed for the purchase price of $850,000. But the Amityville horror house was reported as purchased for $605,000 on February 9, 2017. Its 3,600 square feet contains 5 massive bedrooms, 3.5 baths, a fully finished basement, and a history marred by murder. The late Vatican exorcist, Fr. Gabriel Amoth, was fond of reminding both the faithful and the skeptical that one of Satan's primary goals is to destroy the family. It's an old strategy to divide and conquer loving souls in hopes of thwarting them of their heavenly reward. Some would say that Amityville operated under a similar strategy of division with paranormal delusions of terror. However, there is one haunting that is considered just as devastatingly terrifying as Amityville, and that is the Smurl haunting house of West Pittston, Pennsylvania. In 1974, the Smurl family purchased a double-block duplex-style home for their large family. Parents Jack and Janet needed lots of room for their 4 young daughters, as well as Jack's parents who were going to live with them as well. Being a staunch Roman Catholic family, the Smurls joined the local parish and were quick to make friends in the small neighborhood community. The first sign of paranormal activity occurred when the family was awakened by bizarre banging noises on the walls and ceilings. Given that the home was older, not much was considered in terms of something sinister being the origin. As the months went by, foul smells began to emerge with no reasonable explanation, as all the plumbing was deemed functional. Terror fully manifested one evening in the family living room when the Smurl's dog, a German Shepherd mix, was picked up by an unseen force and thrown violently against the wall in full view of the entire family. Months and months went by as the terror grew. The Smurls were rebuffed by the Catholic Church as their claims were not taken seriously by clergy who demanded more proof than they could provide. Asterisk. Things still worsened as Jack's mother suffered a devastating heart attack at home while the appearance of what only could be described as black masses floated throughout the home, accompanying with them sudden room freezing temperatures. The months turned into years as the Smurls met, every day firm with resolve and perseverance. Asterisk. One late afternoon, the youngest daughter was doing her homework at the kitchen table when the overhead ceiling light began to furiously sway. Asterisk, with a sudden snap. It broke loose and fell with the child, dodging herself out of the way by mere inches. Asterisk. A heavy lighting fixture that both Jack and his father installed would secure. Thick 14mm bolts had ripped themselves straight out of the drilled hardwood. Asterisk. Convinced that whatever demonic entity was in the home wanted to do them bodily harm, the Smurls were committed to being extra vigilant. Asterisk. Then, one evening with the family out and the home to himself, Jack Smurl was sexually assaulted by a succubus in the family living room. Asterisk. The shame and violation he felt only turned into anger when Janet had revealed to him that she too had been sexually assaulted. Asterisk. Her assaulter was completely unseen, as it was in the middle of the night in bed while Jack was kept asleep. Later, Janet said that she was completely paralyzed by something and unable to struggle against her unseen attacker. Asterisk. The Smurls had finally had enough of the torment and reached out for help. Only this time, it didn't yet come in the form of the Catholic Church, but instead came from a pair of paranormal investigators. Asterisk. Ed did his best at using religious provocation to bring out whatever was in the home as known medium. Lorraine had taken to extensively touring the home, looking to connect with whatever was there. Asterisk. Sitting down with the Warrens concluded that there were 4 presences in the home. There were 2 women, with the younger being past the age of a teenager, who she felt had a malevolent tendency. Asterisk. Another was the spirit of a man who Lorraine felt had died in the home decades earlier or on the physical property itself. Asterisk. Finally, there was a powerful demon who reigned over the home and supernaturally forced the home's 3 spirits to torment the Smurls. Asterisk. Against such powerful odds, the Warrens put the family in touch with an Episcopal priest, who came and performed an exorcism on the home. Asterisk. As the activity dwindled to a degree, word spread throughout the neighborhood and into the local media. Soon, news, vans and reporters were staked out on the neighborhood block, looking to break any new information. Asterisk. As a result, the Catholic Church sent a priest to live in the home briefly with the Smurls, so as to not appear cold to the situation. After half a week, the priest left due to no activity surfacing. Asterisk. However, the Smurls underwent a 2nd and 3rd exorcism shortly thereafter. Asterisk. Finally, in 1987, the family had enough of the activity in the home and moved. Weeks into their new home, the solitary black mass manifested and the terror slowly began again. Asterisk. Reaching out with one final plea, the family was able to procure a 4th and final exorcism, this time from the Catholic Church. Asterisk. Details about what went on during it were kept secret, but it was believed to be the longest and most powerful of the 4 exorcisms the family endured. Asterisk. Today, the family remains out of the paranormal spotlight. Both of Jack's parents are now deceased, as is Jack himself, who died in 2017. Asterisk. Janet and her now adult daughters still reside near the West Pittston area and have reported no paranormal activity since that final exorcism. In the demonic battle for the souls of the Smurl family, the Smurls surely won.